Hello, everybody. This is Carlos Patara, and I'm broadcasting here from Immigration Live. We have a special guest today. Today, we're going to discuss family separation. What happens to the children of immigrants who are deported? It's a critical issue. Last week, I discussed what happens when the family relocates. This week, we're going to talk about what happens when the family is separated. Our special guest today is Margarita Jane Dentino from Casa Frio, a nonprofit organization in New Jersey. Margarita, would you like to say hello to the audience?
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much, Carlos, for inviting us on the show. We've been here in Freehold for 14 years when we began a unique struggle. Well, not so unique because it was happening all over the country, but basically it was a time when they wanted to get rid of the day laborers, get rid of the immigrants here, but still have their labor, as happens often. And that was how we came into existence.
How many years ago was that?
14 years ago. We took this town to federal court and we won.
and generally speaking, how do you raise funds? Is it just donations? You get government grants? How does your organization sustain itself?
Well, we began in the street on the corners where day laborers gather, and we're still there. But at a certain point, the day laborers themselves voted to have a place with four walls, an indoor place, and they voted to give $1 every time they went to work. That's about as grassroots as it gets. And that worked for a long time, but now it's not enough. And we do suffer to pay the rent every month and to maintain just certain expenses of phone and computer and those things.
And so does that come out of like labor union dues?
No, even though our day laborers function in many ways like a labor union, they have their own list, they make their own rules. Their rule is predominantly respect for one another. They don't have dues. We do have a membership, and people pay $35 a year for their membership, and it's a very participatory organization. So that does help some, but again, it doesn't carry the expenses that we have now.
So what type of services does your organization provide?
Well, right now, our community is afraid. You know, they're probably living at a higher level of fear than they have in my whole 14 years of doing this work. So we have a big thrust of keeping our community safe, of working on safety plans with our families. 14 years ago, we were primarily men day laborers. Now we're men, women, and children, which has partly come because of the militarization of the border, that people can't go back and forth like they used to.
Now, what percentage of your membership of the people you serve are immigrants?
What percentage of the people we serve? Pretty much 100%.
Okay, so that strikes me as interesting, because then a lot of them probably aren't members of labor unions, or are they? Maybe I'm just lost.
No, they're actually with Endelon. We're members of National Day Laborers Organizing Network. We're members of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, and Endelon does have an agreement with the AFL-CIO to try to incorporate immigrant workers into the union. And it's something that we have worked with them on for quite a while. Its progress, at least in our area, has been pretty limited.
And so out of you work with families. So about how many families that you work with would you say are immigrant families where both mom and dad are immigrants versus immigrant families where one spouse is either the husband or wife is a legal resident or U.S. citizen?
I would say probably at least 90 to 95% of our families have both spouses of immigrants. We consider the families to be a kind of mixture, though, because if we take a family as a whole extended family, some of them are legal residents, some of them are citizens, and some of them are citizens of other countries.
Okay, and of the countries you serve, what countries are they from? Are they from a variety of countries?
We serve all countries, and that was a decision, even though our name is Casa Freehold, a Latino name, and the majority of our population, we probably have a large degree of Mexican people, maybe than other countries. Although in recent years, there have been fewer people coming from Mexico and more coming from Latin American countries, of El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, like that. But we also we see people from European countries, from Asian countries, from African countries. We made a decision early on to receive everybody.
You know, I forgot to ask you an important question. Where is Freehold, New Jersey?
Yeah, that's a good question. We are in Monmouth County in New Jersey, not far from really near the Jersey Shore, about 50 miles south of New York City. So if you came from New York City on the bus, it would take you about 1 hour.
Now that helps me a lot. When you say 50 miles from New York City, I get a little bearing on that. I mean, that's the big reference point for most of us on the West Coast. So before you joined or created, did you join or create Casa Freehold?
I did not create Casa Freehold. No, I think it basically came out of what was happening in the community. There was a mayor running unopposed for his 25th year on an anti-immigrant platform who was going to shut down the ability to look for work, kick people out of their housing. And so there were two organizations formed. One at that point was Monmouth County Residents for Immigrant Rights, and the other was Day Laborers of Freehold. And then we came together to form Casa Freehold. So it was a large group of people.
Before that experience, had you worked with immigrants and immigrant families?
No.
So that was.
I wouldn't say no, but not in this capacity. I mean, many years ago when I was in the 8th grade, I began working with Cuban people coming to this country because they trained us to teach English.
Okay, well, you know, I'd like to dive a little into the issue of family separation. Now, if a large percentage of your families are where they're both immigrants, then that would seem to mean to me that they both can be deported.
Exactly.
Okay, so I would assume in some cases they do both get deported. But talk to me first about a family where one parent has been deported and another parent hasn't. And so the child or children have to live with only one parent here. Have you experienced that situation?
We've experienced every variety of situation. We had a family come a few years back from Peru, and they were very active in Casa Freehold, but they didn't disclose to us what their situation was with immigration. And in fact, they had come from Utah to here, and in the bus station, they had been given an order to maintain contact with ICE. But they thought somehow if they brought themselves to Freehold, they would be able to kind of disappear here, which is not true. And so all of them were from Peru, not including the 7-year-old daughter. So the child went to school. She was very outgoing and friendly. She had many school friends. Everybody loved the family. And then one day, the father was waiting outside on the corner for work, and ICE came up and took the father. They went to the house. They took the mother. And then I got a call saying the daughter, 7, was in the school and would be coming home to an empty house.
Was the child thrown into the foster care system?
No, what they did is, the mother desperately called us and she said, please take care of our child. And we did. We got the child from school and they put an ankle bracelet on the mother and they let her come back with an order of removal. And they put the father in detention and they quickly deported him. But they let the mother come back with an ankle bracelet, but still with an order of removal.
And is that mother now in the United States with her child still, or did she
No.
eventually get removed?
Ultimately, they removed both the mother and the child.
Well, so
And
where was the
that
child?
bracelet experience is a horrible one for the entire family. I think that's important to bring up too.
Yeah, well, there's been studies that show that 5 million children. There are 5 million children with at least one parent that's undocumented under the age of 18, and the studies have shown that about 79% of those children, 79% of those at-risk children of losing a parent are U.S. citizen children. So, and they're under the age of 18. So, I did some quick math, and basically it comes out to the fact that there's about 4 million U.S. citizen children under the age of 18 living with at least one parent that's undocumented, that's at risk of losing their parent. Now,
And they live with that every single day. So not only is it the actual time of deportation, it's the knowledge that at any moment their parent or parents might be gone. And I think I told you previously that we had met with all the guidance counselors here in our county because they wondered what happened when a student was going along, doing really well and enjoying school. And then one day, boom, it just fell off the charts and they were doing horribly. And this is what was happening. A parent was being deported or was at risk of, imminent deportation.
Does your organization prepare any like emergency packets, any guardianship papers, any prepare in advance type of information to give the families that are at risk?
This is what we're urgently doing right now. And what we've been doing it for a long time, but right now under the Trump administration, we're in a far more emergency situation. So we do a kind of two-part workshop where we do a know your rights and we do how to make a family plan. I mean, if I'm a parent, which I am, I don't know if I'm going to be here tomorrow. Every parent needs to do that to some extent, but this is different in the sense that we're planning, one, if that parent's gone, and two, how to reunite that family as quickly as possible. Because if I have children 2 or 3 years old and I'm gone, then I want them to be able to come back with my children as quickly as possible. So we make that whole plan. They go home and they make their plan. They come back for the second part of this workshop. And yes, we have all those papers. They're specifically approved by the state of New Jersey. In each state, it's a little bit different, powers of attorney and their own social services for children and those kinds of things, So we have it all approved under New Jersey.
So would you say that the vast majority of the children of these families know ahead of time about their parents' situation?
I think, yes, I think the vast majority of the children know that their parents do not have papers. And oftentimes the children themselves, there may be one of the children who was born out of the country. There may be others of the children who were born in this country. So the children themselves can be a mix too, often are. And the family themselves, they're aware of that.
And how do you think it affects or do you know how it affects the children psychologically? Does it affect their sense of self-worth? Does it affect how their peers relate to them? And I assume, based on what you've already said, that it affects their school performance. But what about their self-perception, their self-worth, and those types of issues?
I mean, that affects certainly their self-worth. The other factor, which has grown tremendously in recent days, is the factor of bullying, that Trump has put forward such an agenda of hate, basically giving people permission to hate, and children down to very young ages are recipients of this bullying. So we have here 3 different people who work in behavioral health, who are bilingual people who work with down to very young children who come in very mistreated, unfortunately, in current days.
So is there the schools that the children you work with, are those schools like mixed schools where a large percentage are here documented that they're legal, they're U.S. citizens, and then you have this other component that's undocumented, that's here without papers, and so there's a clash perhaps between the children or the social classes. Is that an issue?
I don't think it's an issue within the immigrant families themselves. I mean, I think, as far as having some of the children who were born here and some of the children who were born out of the country within the immigrant families, I think they're consider themselves all equal. Of course, in the eyes of the law, their situation is quite different, because the person with papers or without papers, their situation is very different.
Now, I know you've been involved with a very intense situation lately where you've gone to court. Would you like to share that with the audience?
Yes, we were trying, and I'll try to hold up this picture to the right angle. Can you see this?
Yeah, I can see it.
This is a family, a husband by the name of Margarito, who's a father of 3 and a stepfather of 3 children. ICE wanted to quickly deport him. And one of those 6 children has enormous disabilities. And so his lawyer and his family asked us to bring in support people. And I think this is something that organizations around the country are doing right now. If they see that, that somebody's at risk of imminent deportation, they accompany them to their check-ins, they accompany them to court to show that there is a huge community behind that person and to try to have that have an impact on the court.
And how do you
got a result because, instead of deporting him, his case has been accepted to move forward as an asylum case.
And so when you work with families like that, are there certain attorneys you assist? Are you helping them on a pro per basis, a pro se basis? Are there paralegals? How do you handle those situations from a legal perspective?
It varies as far as the legal perspective. In the case of this gentleman, he has a lawyer, a very good lawyer, and the lawyer and the family asked for our help. We've had other situations where I had a boy who came up from Guatemala, and then he was living with his uncle. His uncle threw him out onto the street, and he arrived here the day before his court. And we accompanied him to court with no lawyer. And so it just depends on the situation.
And you, do you take an active role personally in those cases?
We do. I mean, of course, we differentiate very strongly that I am not a lawyer and we are not lawyers. We work with the lawyers. There's an organization, for example, Mil Mujeres, which works with the women who are victims of domestic violence, and will work hand in hand. We tend to work very closely with our team of lawyers, whether it be work accidents or whether it be families or whatever it is.
Now, a while back, there was some indication that the consulate of Mexico was going to be contributing, I think, $50,000 to each locality. Do you have any experience with that?
Sadly, we have a kind of traumatic experience because the consulate of Mexico was here this past Tuesday evening. The Mexican government put $50 million for the defense and protection of its people here in this country. So we raised the question about the specifics of what those services would be. They proceeded to tell us that instead of the mobile consulates, which have been here for 14 years all around the different areas of New Jersey, they would be consolidating their program in one area of Passaic, which is north of New York City, but very inaccessible to the people in central Jersey, and there would be no more Mexican consulates. So I guess our response was, well, if there's $50 million, now there's less service instead of more. Why?
And what answer did they give you?
We haven't received an answer yet, except we were just told that they would take our responses and review it in New York. And we're having a statewide meeting of all the people who are impacted by that within the next few days. So next time I talk to you, hopefully we'll know more.
And so was the anticipation that they would be soliciting grants from nonprofit and community-based organizations? Or what was the thinking originally when they said they were going to be helping localities defend undocumented immigrants?
Well, I mean, I guess our thinking was, even though it sounds like a lot of money, $50 million, we knew that with 25 million Mexican people in this country, it would come down to maybe at the outside $1.50 a person. So we knew the only way that could be effective would be to form strong teams, which we were ready to do, to form strong legal teams, counseling teams, you know, and just work in tandem with them. But instead, we feel cut off.
Now, and I think we're coming to our limit here in the time, but how is the funding for your organization right now? Is it strong? Is it weak? Has the Trump administration being in charge and creating this fear, has it also affected the amount of donors and donations and people willing to come forward to support the plight of undocumented immigrants?
I think people are. I mean, in one way, with the Trump administration, I think the level of awareness has grown about problems which you and I know have actually been around for a long time. We know that more people than ever were deported under Obama, but we didn't have the number of volunteers. So I think, you know, we do have a lot of people coming forward as volunteers and trying to help us fundraise. That being said, we still struggle month by month by month to pay our rent and our basic bills. You know, and anybody could send things to our address, which is 6 Throckmorton Street, Freehold, at Casa Freehold.
Okay, so I guess you wouldn't mind if I make a pitch for donations for Casa Freehold. There is a phone number that I know you can call to talk to Margarita. It's 732-492-1852. And I strongly solicit anybody with a few extra dollars or a few extra $100 or even a few extra $1,000 to give her a call for the good work that they're doing there in New Jersey. Maybe miles away from California, but the battles are just as intense. That I can say for certainty. Now, would you like to add anything to that in terms of the need for donations?
Very much. We just now managed to pay the balance of July rent, and we see August rent looming up ahead. And, you know, and it is hard. You know, we just want to put our energies to fighting for our people. You know, and so it's hard if we have to put so much energies into raising money to carry us in very basic ways. I receive no salary. Nobody here receives any salary.
Wow. That is absolutely amazing. You do this on a volunteer basis. I am, whoa, that's amazing.
So, and I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing. I'm just saying that is our situation right now. But so it's basically, we just need to carry our rent and basic expenses to continue to do our work. Yeah.
Nice. So you must have a very thin budget.
We do, about the thinnest of budgets. Yes.
So I'm assuming your budget includes that there's got to be some items for lunch and some, you know, copy paper and all that, correct?
Right. Yeah. Obviously, we have a wonderful IT volunteer, a man who puts in literally hundreds of hours on, you know, maintaining our computer setups, just like we're on right now, which is necessary in this day and age, and making sure my phone works, which is, I have over 3,000 contacts on my phone. So it's a hotline for many people.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on the air, and I want to let everyone know that on July 26th at 11 o'clock, we're going to do a full broadcast with Casa Freehold and Margarita. We're going to discuss the issues that she's brought up in more depth. Obviously, there's a lot more here, and this only touches the surface. So, as I said earlier, Immigration Live is back. This is the weekly mini version, and we're going to be coming back with the full version. And I think that this is definitely a topic we want to explore more with Margarita. And with that, Margarita, I want to say thank you very much. I really appreciate you being brave to being my first guest on the Return of Immigration Live. I mean, that's really, you're really a brave person. You took the risk that I was going to pull this out. But anyway, so with that,
pleasure.
I want to say thank you. Is there any parting words of wisdom that you would want to give to immigrant activists or advocates or immigrants themselves before we close today?
Well, one of the things we discussed now, our country is way too divided in every way, shape, and form. And our advice to people is every single day, step outside your normal boundaries. Do something, however small, to extend those boundaries, whether it's a smile at a stranger, anything. We all have to do that right now.
Or go to your nearest nonprofit center and do what Margarita's doing and donate some time, right?
Exactly. Just like, I mean, all those people that we had at court yesterday, it was just amazing. And most of them were people who never would have done that before. So I'm very proud of them.
Yeah, well, you're doing a great job there. And I look forward to meeting up with you again in a couple of weeks here as we do it on a different platform and different technology, but still here, Facebook Live, everyone will be able to catch it. So tell your friends that, one, Immigration Live is back, but two, please donate to Casa Frijo, okay? And come back and join us in our next broadcast. Thank you very much. I'll see you later. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Know someone who might be interested in this video? Then please take a moment to like and share it with them. Also, if you would like more videos on immigration, just click on the subscribe button. And here's a little bonus, a short guide that you can download for free by clicking on the link on the description box or the square-shaped image. Plus, if you have ideas for videos you'd like to see, write a short comment below or feel free to contact me at carlos@VitaraImmigrationLaw.com. My name is Carlos Vitara. I appreciate your time and hopefully we'll be talking again very, very soon.